This session is titled Deep in the Heart, a Texas Wildlife Story, and it's going to be presented by Jay Kleberg and Anne-Marie Fayen. This project they're going to talk to us about is called Deep in the Heart. It's going to be the first blue chip wildlife documentary ever produced about Texas. I've seen a couple of the sneak peeks before, and it is really cool. I'm sure we're going to see those during this session and learn about some of the curriculum that they're writing to go along with this documentary. So I'll let Jay and Anne-Marie take it away.
Great, thanks, Mark. Well, I think we've got about 45 minutes, and so we'll get through some of the information on the film. For those of you who have heard this presentation before, we'll have a clip. We've got some curriculum that and some lesson plans that Anne-Marie Fayen is working on. And I'll just I'll first start by saying that this is a screen grab from some film that we captured of an ocelot down in South Texas on a high definition camera trap. And we've got some pretty amazing footage to share with people, and we're excited. We're about 2 weeks away from a 2-hour rough cut of the film. So we're on track and excited to share this with everybody. So today we want to talk a little bit about this feature-length film, about who we're trying to reach with it, some of the resources that we're developing, where we're going to drive people once they've seen the film, whether that's in a theater, online, or through our website, some of the free clips that we're going to offer, our outreach plan, and we're going to ask you all to be thinking about how we can get information about this film to informal, formal educators, to schools and children. We'll share a little bit about our plans thus far, who we've reached out to and who we plan to over the next few months, some of the conservation organization partners, and how we plan to distribute the film once it's complete, and the theatrical release will be in 2023 in the spring, and then how we're going to measure impact for the film. So as Mark said, this will be the first blue chip wildlife documentary, and by blue chip, all we mean is it's in the same style as Our Planet or Planet Earth, with a narrator and really wildlife and the environment as the primary characters. And so you won't see any other actors. We're working on a contract with Matthew McConaughey to be the narrator. So you just hear his voice and see what we hope will be some amazing footage of bison and alligator gar and redfish and mountain lion and so on, so that we can really bring that kind of cinematic quality, those amazing stories that a lot of kids are used to seeing of other places in the world, and that this will be something that really is in their backyard. And so one of the things that we've decided as a team is to let you all view these clips on your own, because trying to stream them through Zoom can just be really choppy. And so what we're gonna do now is let you all see a clip of bison in the Caprock Canyons area, and it's just about 8 minutes long. So go ahead and grab, and Anne-Marie, I don't know if you have, or if you can grab and paste the link and the password into chat.
Yeah, I'll do that.
And we're just gonna like pause for 10 minutes and let you all view this clip, because it'll be really informative. It'll say more than anything that we can in the next 30 minutes or so about the kind of quality that we're producing and the story that we're trying to tell about one particular species, which is bison in the Caprock Canyons area. So click on the link, use the password video, and we're just gonna hang out here for about 10 minutes, and then you all come back on and we'll continue the presentation from here. And if anybody has any questions as y'all are viewing that on your own, certainly type anything into the chat, and we can type away, or we can answer those questions when you come back. Okay, I'll give everybody just one more minute, and then we will get back into this. And I'll answer. Yes. So as far as genetic diversity goes, that I can remember, you know, they've gotten to the point now. Someone asked about um, genetic diversity within the caprock herd, and that is starting to be a problem. And so they're looking at some other genetically similar herds that they can, if they haven't already introduced genetics, and also looking at some other locations, because they're pretty much at their carrying capacity there at Caprock, whether that be Palo Duro or some of the locations with similar terrain and topography and ecosystem. So they're working on it, and part of the kind of awareness that we're trying to raise about that herd, not just the natural history, but also that with bison, including some other species that we're going to cover in the film. So I'll go ahead and it's been about 10 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and get started again. So I'm Jay Kleberg. For anybody that entered here recently, I'm producer of Deep in the Heart, this feature documentary. I've got some experience in land, water, and wildlife conservation in Brazil, worked at Grand Canyon National Park, and more recently worked at Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation. And for this particular film, the audience for, and there really are a couple of products. One is a feature length theatrical film. So that will release in theaters in the spring of next year. That'll be available like other films that you're used to watching, you know, these kind of nature documentaries on iTunes and Amazon. So be readily available, and that would be something that people would pay for. And then we're also going to have a 4 segments of the film that will be somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes long. And the audience for that is more than just the general public. It's really specifically educators and children K through 12. And the narration for those 4 clips, as Anne Marie will detail, is really geared more towards K through 12 students, specifically science and social studies. And one of the things that we've set out as a goal is to reach just over 300,000 students in the first 12 to 24 months of the release of the film. And the way that we're going to measure that now, at least, is through downloads, some extrapolation in terms of class size, and then to the degree that we can measure through feedback that we get on the film through forms, online forms, we'll measure that as well. So the main storylines for the film, I've categorized them here by ecoregion, and they don't necessarily lay out that way in the film, but we really wanted to touch as much as we possibly could on as many of the 11 or so ecoregions in the state of Texas, and trying to tell the story of water and wildlife through the eyes of specific species. And then on our site, we'll have a couple of different ways that people can either learn more and download lesson plans and presentations on some of these species, or if they're interested in learning more and giving back in some way, whether that's volunteering or donating, that we'll have conservation organizations that are focused on these particular species and their either conservation or recovery efforts.
And hi, I'm Anne Marie. So I'm going to jump in and talk a little more specifically about the education resources. So my background is originally in elementary education. I taught in Fort Worth for a couple years. And then I've been working in informal ed more recently, both in Chicago and then for the past 5 years in Dallas. So for the education resources, I know Jay has been thinking about this for a while. He even presented at ISEA last year to get some feedback on these ideas. But I started working with Jay this past fall, and after a lot of thought and discussion, we've decided that the education resources will consist of 4 short clips from the original full-length film. And then each clip will have a lesson plan for these 4 grade bands listed here in part 2 of this slide. So these clips will be available for free on the website, and they'll be roughly 10 minutes long. And they'll include the same shots from the film, but the narration will be different, and it'll be tailored specifically to a K-12 audience. So we're keeping in mind the TEKS and then also vocabulary that students are asked to learn in Texas. So these 4 clips will be bison, ocelot, Guadalupe bass, and the redfish. So the bison clip will include much of the footage that you just saw with different narration. And then we're also going to change up the order a bit. So the part about the bison slaughter will be at the end. And that's so students first, learn what a bison is, learn a little bit more about a bison before they hear that history. And this will also give teachers of younger kids the option to end the film early if that part isn't appropriate for their learners. Oh, whoops. Can you go back one more? There we go. So Ocelot will focus on South Texas. And as Jay mentioned, there was a lot of camera traps set up in that area. So there's some really great clips of a mother ocelot and 2 kittens. And then Guadalupe bass will focus on hill country, and there'll be some themes of water in general in that clip. And then the redfish will focus on ecosystems on the Gulf Coast. So there'll be a total of 16 lessons. So for each of these 4 films, there'll be 4 lessons. Okay, now I'm ready. So as we mentioned, these lessons will be aligned to the TEKS. So we're looking specifically at K-12 science TEKS and also K-12 social studies TEKS. I'm also looking at NGSS, and I will list NGSS connections as they're fit. The main focus will be Texas, but since this resource will be online, I'll also list the NGSS standards so that teachers across the country could use this. And then also those teachers in Texas that do follow NGSS will have that for references. So I pulled out some science TEKS and social studies TEKS that these themes I saw throughout most grade levels. And the nice thing about this film is because it tells stories about an entire ecosystem, that most of these themes are present in each of the 4 clips. But for focus, I am going to pick 2 to 3 themes for each grade band for each clip to base the lesson on. So this is a point where we're going to need some feedback from you, and we have a survey for you to complete at the end. But because there's so many possible connections to each clip, we want to create a set of lessons that will be available for free online, but then also create some way that educators can share additional ideas of ways that they're using the resource. So we've talked about using social media platforms. So using some existing resource that teachers already go to as a place where they can share quick pictures of new ideas, or that they could even share a student document. So we're thinking about how we could use Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest. So on the survey at the end, we'll ask for your feedback on that, because we need some ideas about how we can expand the resource to more than what will be available online. Okay. Okay, so here's some more details about what each lesson will look like. So each lesson plan will follow the 5E model, and Each lesson will include a formative assessment prompt. So this will be something that educators can use to gauge what students already know before the lesson starts. They can use to measure student learning. And then also this will be a way to help focus students' attention and get them thinking about the concepts that will be addressed in the lesson. There'll also be PowerPoints and Google Slides that will support the lesson, and then student documents that can be downloaded and hopefully also completed online. And then each lesson will also include some teacher background information to provide some more context for the lesson. So these are two shots. They're screenshots from part of the film. And I pulled these two because even though the 4 education clips will focus on those animals that were on the slide a few slides ago, it's telling the story in a whole ecosystem. So students will be exposed to many other organisms that are native to Texas beyond just those 4 focus animals. Okay, so here's a little more detail about some components that will be included in the lessons. So these are 3 strategies that I'm keeping in mind as I write the resources. So I already mentioned that the lessons will follow the 5E structure. But one thing that I'm keeping in mind is this explore before explain teaching strategy. So over the summer, I had the opportunity to do a workshop with Pat Brown, who is an NSTA author who wrote this book, Instructional Sequence Matters. And I have a picture here of the book for grades 6 through 8, but he has a book for 3 through 5. And then also, I think he has one coming out for high school. But he's been a science educator for a while. And what his books and his presentations emphasize is that he's noticed a lot of science educators have gotten into the pattern of sharing information with students and then providing them with a hands-on activity that just proves that information they were just told. So in this explore before explain strategy, the emphasis is put on letting students have the experience first so that they can construct their own knowledge from that experience, and then having the discussions to emphasize that meaning making. So when I'm writing these lessons, I'm trying to focus on how can students explore the content before the concepts are discussed and analyzed. I mentioned formative assessment probes. So those will be included in each lesson. And if you're familiar with Paige Keeley, she has a lot of assessment probes in her books. And I'm also looking at AAAS and then Mozart, which is assessments for misconceptions in science. That's a resource through Harvard. So I've been downloading those assessments and taking those to look at common misconceptions that students have about our environment. And then finally, the emphasis on these student resources will be exposing students to nature and helping them understand and learn about the native environments in Texas. So the emphasis will really be focused on helping students develop a connection to nature that will ideally later on lead to them becoming adults who are stewards of the environment. So while there will be some opportunities for students to act and engage in conservation projects, the main focus will be really on helping them connect to nature and learning to love our environment. Okay, I'm ready for the next. Okay, here's a little more information about what the website will look like. So when you go to the Deep in the Heart website, there'll be general information about the film and about the stories that are told throughout the entire movie. But there'll also be a button for Learn and a button for Act. So under Learn is where you will be able to stream those education videos at no cost. And those will be available in spring 2022. And you'll also be able to view and download the teacher and student resources. So we will probably have some way for you to enter some information either before or after you download those resources, so we can reach those goals that Jay mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. And then in that ACT section, there will be opportunities and ideas around supporting conservation. So these will be ideas that are open to the public, but you may be able to get some ideas for your students there as well. And then, so I will wrap up my part by sharing this list here that includes some organizations that Deep in the Heart has already connected with in order to share resources. But we would love some more ideas about organizations that we can connect with. So if you could just glance over this list and jot down any ideas you have of other people or organizations that we should connect with. In that survey at the end, there'll be an opportunity for you to put that info in so that we can make sure that this resource reaches as many students as possible.
And something that I'll add real quick, and then Anne-Marie, I want you to stay on just for a second for a couple of questions. We've either presented to or reached out to a number of these organizations. There are a few that we haven't yet, in part just because we weren't necessarily ready, or it just wasn't the right time. But the science coordinators, I know that that Ileana Pena, for instance, at TWA had mentioned she's got a contact there, and we're looking for more there at the 20 regional education services, and also not just in science, but in social studies. We've presented to, and we'll be continuing to present to STAT. The Texas Association of School Boards and administrators. Those are two organizations that we haven't yet presented to. So if anyone has any suggestions there, along with principals and supervisors association and the library association, and some of these others we've presented to, but definitely are looking for any kind of warm introduction that you all can make for us. And we'll have the form at the end, and then we also have our email addresses on the last slide. And a couple of things I wanted to just address in case people have to leave is Aaron asked about CPE hours, and it's definitely something that we've talked about. And now that we actually have someone who's an educator who knows what she's talking about in Anne-Marie, I think that we probably could do some of that. That's my guess, and it would be just as easy as kind of what we're doing here today. I don't know necessarily the processes that we need to go through to get those like registered, if that's even a thing, but I am certainly a proponent of us doing that if we can.
Yeah, I've always done CPE credits with the Dallas Arboretum, but we could look into becoming an approved provider, because I do think it would be beneficial to provide some background for teachers. We also talked about having videos available for free online that teachers could watch and then use the resources. So that could be an option for training. Not sure if we could offer CPEs for that, but that could be another training component.
Yeah, I think as far as like scope and being able to reach as many people as possible, I would definitely be an advocate of putting up some of those training videos as well. And then, so let me run through a few of these slides, and then let me come back to some of these questions. Texas Association of Environmental Educators, Texas Association, that Mark asked if TAE was the same as TAEE. And I think that we had, Texas Association of Environmental Educators, we've presented to that group. And then environmental educators. Yeah, some of these, the Environmental Educator Advisory Council, that was TAE that we've presented to before. So, and some of these, I put this together, so I may have added a word here or there that may not be appropriate. So far, these are our plans for the spring of this year. This is some of what we've done in the past, who we've presented to, and STAT is going to have a session just for Deep in the Heart here. I think we're trying to do March sometime. And as I mentioned, there are a number of conservation organization partners that we're trying to raise awareness for. And this is just a list of those. I know that Texas Wildlife Association is on today, and that's a group that we would like to, specifically with white-tailed deer, focus in on what you all do as an organization. And then the distribution plan is by the end of this year, we will have the feature film completed. We'll have the curriculum developed. We'll have most of the clips, if not all of those the shorter clips developed. And then our hope is that by South by Southwest of next year, we would get in and we would premiere there. We've premiered one of our last film premiered there, so that's our hope. And then we'd have a theatrical release for a few months after that, kind of late spring, early summer. As soon as the film releases, we would then release the clips and the curriculum. And then after that, in July, people would be able to stream on demand. And then for those that have subscription services like Stars or Showtime, kind of those type channels, depending on who picks us up. PBS, I think, may want to do a shorter version of the film, and that may be statewide or national. So we have big plans for the film. And then as far as measurable impact, and I'm going to see if I can connect here in a second because I may be losing power, but one of the things that I want to pinpoint here is not just how many students we want to reach, but also that we're open to community screenings. And so what that can look like is you can pull the film if you would like to your nature center, to your school, to wherever. We hold the education rights to the film. So, if you can pay for the full length film, which would be, $12 or whatever that is on any sort of streaming service. But then if you wanted the film and you couldn't, for whatever reason, you needed help with that, we can deliver the film to you. And then we can also, depending on how our calendars lay out, we did this with our last film, we can host community screenings where we can bring some of the people that were involved in the film to your community to help with outreach and awareness, not just for the film, but for what you all are doing. So just keep that in mind as we roll this out. And then here is the survey that Anne-Marie put together. And actually, Anne-Marie, I'm going to let you, can you walk through this with everybody? And I'm just going to plug in while you're doing that.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so this is a survey where we'd love to have your feedback. I just put the link in the chat, or you could scan this QR code. But first of all, if you would like to just be notified when these resources are available, please go ahead and put your name and email address in that survey, and we'll add you to our educator list. There's also a part in this survey where you can let us know if you'd like to provide feedback on the curriculum. So I'm mostly working in Google Docs. So as drafts become ready, I could email you links to these drafts, and then I would greatly appreciate your feedback on these documents. And then, as we've talked about before, if you have educator contacts you think we should be connected with, that would be great. I saw in the chat somebody asked about regional contacts, and we're definitely open to regional contacts and statewide contacts. And that also made me think about professional development, which that could be a way to connect with these organizations. So maybe we could offer we could partner with organizations to provide professional development to help educators learn about these resources. And then finally, there's the opportunity to indicate if you're interested in hosting a film screening.
And here's our contact information. This is our last slide. So just want to thank you all. I know this is a difficult time for everybody, and hope that everyone's safe and their friends and family are. And just appreciate you all, especially those of you who have heard some of this before. Hopefully some of this is new, and just really excited to have Anne-Marie on board to bring a lot of these ideas to life. And want to thank everybody for their feedback as we've developed this so far, and we've got another 12 months to really improve on this product. So thank you. And I guess if there are any other, I'll hand it back over to Mark or to Sarah, or if anybody has any questions, you know, depending on how much time we've got, we'll stick around.
So we do have one question in the chat about kind of your groups that you're reaching out to. Would you be interested in regional groups too, or do you just want to keep it to statewide orgs?
Yeah, I think Anne-Marie had referenced that as well. We're interested in really any and all groups. You know, as an example, we were working with Seguin ISD this last summer, continue to stay in contact with them. I think nature centers, you know, not just at a statewide level, but what we're hoping is that teachers and educators, formal and informal, will want to pull this into the classroom or pull this into the home. And so we're open to talking to anyone and everyone about this.
Wonderful. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to either just turn yourselves off mute and you can ask the question, or if you want to put it in the chat, either way is fine. We've got probably about 4 minutes left.
Hi, my internet's horrible, so I'm going to try and talk fast. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know how I'm going to talk fast because I just think that this work is so amazing. And I just love what y'all are doing. I'm so excited to have a documentary about Texas nature out. I can't tell you how excited I am. But my question is to Anne, I didn't know if you said this already, but how did you get involved in this? Like, what did you do before this, and how did you get involved?
Yeah, so my background is in elementary education, and then I've been working in informal ed for about 11 years. So I worked in Chicago, and then for the past 5 years, I've been in Dallas. And it's kind of worked out because of timing. So for the past 3 years, I worked at the Dallas Arboretum. My role there has been the academic programs manager. So writing lessons for field trip and outreach programs, and then also doing teacher professional development. And then my husband got a job in Denver. So in the fall, we moved here. And I'm still doing some contract work with the Dallas Arboretum, but I was open to other contract work. And Kiki from Texas Parks and Wildlife put me in touch with Jay. So really, it was good timing. But like I said, my background's in elementary ed, and then a lot of experience in informal ed.
Cool, thanks.
Well, thank you. Just a couple of announcements real quick. I put a link to our session survey, so if you could take a few moments to do that. And then join us tonight. After this session, we'll break until 7. And then at 7, we'll start campfire night from home, and the link for that is in the chat. And then tomorrow we'll start back up at 2 with our TAEE is sponsoring our day tomorrow. So Andres Buzo is our speaker tomorrow.
Thank you all so much. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Jay and Anne-Marie. Loved the session.